Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good whatever time it is, wherever you are. I am Aneesh de Vos. And before I introduce our really fascinating guest, I'm going to introduce the better late than never, David Butler. How you doing, David? Little windswept in your rush to arrive? I don't know.
Dealt with me, really, wouldn't it? Windswept, but thank you for your patience. It's greatly appreciated.
Anybody that's not sure what happened, David was late. Something that in our very strong friendship, you've never been late before. So it was quite an amusing moment.
No, it's not like me to be tardy, I must confess. That was one of my virtues. There aren't many.
More than you think. There's more than you think. But enough of you, David. We've given you enough airtime. Yes, absolutely. I would like to introduce Sarah Smith. And Sarah is an aspiring author. And today, which we always get a little bit excited about, Sarah's going to be sharing some of her creative writing. And her creative writing is a reflection of her lived experience. On the back of that, as I would often say in sessions before, if you feel triggered by anything that Sarah may share, take care of yourself. Come out, go get yourself a cup of tea, just go take some time, reach out to people if you need to, because there will be some distressing content at times, won't there, Sarah? Yeah.
Yes, there may well be.
Okay, so Sarah, we've been talking, haven't we, a little bit, and what we're going to be looking at today is, and this is about you, that your goal of human connection and learning to trust from a past of dissociation.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, as most humans would admit, that human connection is one of the most vital parts of our existence, and having those healthy relationships with not just romantic ones, but relationships with your parents, with your friends, with your work colleagues, with people that are just there in your life on a day-to-day basis, or strangers. It's so important, and we have these connections throughout the day, and throughout so many walks of life with people. And I found that, I've only just sort of started to realize these things about myself, with how important that connection is to somebody, because, as you've mentioned, Aneesh, I was very dissociated for a long period of time. And with that came, on reflection, a very lonely, kind of isolated existence, which predominantly made me a recluse, a bit of an introvert, but outwardly I'd be very dramatic, very masked, very not true, not a true authentic version of myself, because I didn't actually know who I was, because I was dissociating all the time. And I think, dissociation comes in many forms, doesn't it, really? It can be a real benefit to us in situations where maybe it's not appropriate to say how we feel, or to react in a certain way, and that needs to be done out of the situation. So dissociation in those sorts of things, and almost a suppression of that immediate reaction, can be quite a valuable tool to learn. But I took it to the extreme, where it then just became the norm for me to kind of just not feel, and not be present in my life, and not be present with people, and not be present in any environment that I was in. And it was only when I sort of started therapy and started really reflecting on myself, did that door open, and sort of the light got switched back on, and went, oh, there's more to life than just dissociation, because mine was built from being in survival mode for a very, very long time. And I learned it in childhood through avoidance, and then it came into dissociation. But it was that survival mode, and you don't realize you're in it sometimes until you look at yourself and go, oh, maybe I need to change that a little bit if I want all of this human connection and these healthy relationships and these bonds and this love and these feelings with people.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get that until I sort this bit of myself out.
So in effect, you were quite protected. You know, we know dissociation can be part of a trauma response, and so it can be. I'll often say to people, it's a very elegant part of a trauma response, because you know it really is an extremity of protection for you.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued by you know, you started to go into therapy, and you then started to look and consider other relationships. And I know you'd said it, you know, in a prior conversation with David and I, it was almost like that you were in a cage and you wanted to get out of that cage.
Yeah, 100%. And I had a big fear of mine throughout a lot of my life was to be in a cage. And that's kind of born from very toxic, very controlling, potentially abusive relationships that I'd been facing. And there was a pattern there. And I mean, in my writing, I've kind of identified the pattern and then looked back sort of transgenerationally and through trauma and childhood trauma, and to see where that pattern was coming from. So when I came out of that sort of toxicity of those relationships, and I was starting to try and choose healthier choices and look at myself in a different way, I was reflecting on that and going, oh gosh, that I felt so trapped. I felt so claustrophobic. I felt so controlled, and I felt like I was in a cage massively for many, many, many years, put there by somebody else. But then I started to realize, as I'd come out of that, why am I still feeling like this? Why am I still feeling so trapped, so claustrophobic, so unable to connect, so unable to experience joy, so unable to do all of these things that everybody else seems to be completely fine doing? And on reflection, on many, many hours of reflection and writing exhaustive amounts, I came to the conclusion that actually the biggest cage that I'd ever been placed in was the one that I'd made for myself. But I'd not made it for myself to control me. I'd made it to defend me. But throughout all of that, and throughout all the sheets of armor that I was wearing, that was great because nothing could get to me, but nothing could get out either. So nothing was being dealt with. Everything was still very internal. And as much as nothing bad could get to me, nothing good could get to me either. So I had to start the process painfully of stripping this armor, stripping these tendencies, these psychological protective methods that I'd very, very intricately crafted within my own mind to survive, and strip them away. And that was probably more painful than a lot of other things that I've experienced, because during those times, during those toxic relationships and those very, very difficult moments in my life, I dissociated. So I wasn't really feeling them until I started to strip them away and had to look at them again.
Yeah. David, I can see you nodding. So I'd like to kind of say, come on, David, come on in. Hopefully you're back in the space with us. One of your things isn't it, that you are quite the specialist is in intergenerational trauma as well, isn't it? And in the impact, and certainly Sarah was sharing that. And I'm just wondering.
It is something that I reflected on through personal circumstances. Wondered why I had these patterns of behavior, the feelings of not being part of something. I think was a big part of it, or not wanting and not being able to be a part of something.
But that longing for it, that longing for belonging. But and the question,
I wondered why I was such an alien, even with friends. And I know now through study and the work I've done around the transmission of intergenerational trauma, that it was a form of protection. And I didn't need it anymore, and breaking out of it is, as you alluded to, Sarah, it is, in the first instance, it's very difficult, and it's also very painful.
It is incredibly so. And I think that particularly when it's intergenerational, it's inbuilt in you to behave like that. So you are relearning everything, and often, I mean, in my experience, I was relearning stuff and I was going into relationships and I didn't know these things were wrong, or I'd questioned that they were wrong, but because of the toxic nature of them, it'd be, no, 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 this is right, you're wrong. So for many, many years, I didn't know what was real, what wasn't real. I couldn't differentiate between reality and not. And then I kind of got to the point where I started questioning myself of when I started coming out of things, of whether I still didn't know what was real, or if I just didn't want to admit what was real. And looking at it and going and owning it was a very difficult process for me. It was very difficult to look at that and go, because I'd separated myself from these instances. I'd look back on it and go, and I kind of know that's me, but I don't feel like it's me. So it's fine. I can talk about that like it's almost a story I've read in a book. And then to make the connection back again was quite the jump, because these tactics and these tendencies they're inbuilt, and particularly if intergenerational, because they're passed down like a disease almost, because and you have to make the decision to be the one to break that cycle. And because I've got my own children as well, I was kind of looking at them and going, I don't want this for them. I don't want this. I mean, all of my trauma is not just tied to my childhood. There's been a lot of other adult trauma that's happened in my life, but it was affecting me, and I am their caregiver. And I was like, okay, here we go. I need to do something now so that these humans grow up to be healthy in a healthy environment, with healthy role models, with healthy coping mechanisms. Something that I had to teach myself through adversity. Really, I had to learn by making all those mistakes, rather than being taught it in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because that blueprint that you were given through, through your DNA, through epigenetics, etc., that blueprint, you basically flipped it, didn't you? And I don't want to pat you on the head, but I just think it takes a massive amount of courage to actually put yourself in a hot seat and go, where was I in that? What can I do to create something different now? And I also heard you talking about, your copious writing and the fact that you do want to be an aspiring author. You clearly are an author, and you wanted to share some of that writing with us. And I'm wondering if this is an opportunity for you to share some of your writing, so that we can hear it in that beautiful, I guess in a way it's a prose, isn't it? You're sharing who you are with the written word. Yeah.
And my writing kind of came by accident. I didn't know that I was going to do this. I just started writing down through therapy, and it was just a tool to help me to remember the things that I was learning. And then it spiraled completely, and then I got a bit of an aptitude for it. But I've got a couple of things that I wanted to share. The first bit is when I write, I visualize things a lot. I speak a lot in metaphors. I speak a lot in things that make sense to me. I'm a very visual person. I see things rather than hear them, and that's what speaks to me. So there's just a little bit of a kind of a story of being in survival mode and how that feels like and what that looks like. There was a girl who was stuck in a forest, surrounded by the tallest, thickest trees. The only glimmer of sunlight against the denseness came at dusk, when the sun fell just right in the sky to offer some glimmers through the leaves. She saw these rays of light daily, piercing through the vast and overwhelming nothingness. Day to day, she would wake up, stretch, yawn, realize she was cold and hungry. A fire would be built and food would be foraged, of which there was an abundance. She would drink clean water from the spring and wash there too. She was still surviving. She knew there must be a way out of the forest. She had aggressively tried many times before to escape, but to no avail. So here she was, resigned to survival in the dark, with the only shred of hope lasting for about 3 minutes a day. She had given up trying to leave, or had she? Had she just become so accustomed to this that she had forgotten what else there was? Or perhaps she had remembered, and she was simply not inclined to join it again. After all, the only thing that could hurt her here was herself. And I wrote that sort of on reflection to how it felt being in that state. And it was very much of a, I can't take this anymore. I can't take any more. So I'm just going to sit in this environment that's so alone and so dark and so, but I'm surviving. I've got food, I've got water, I've got shelter, I've got all of these things that I need. My baseline was covered, but nothing could get to me. Nobody knew where I was. It was fine. It was safe. And I was responsible for only me.
Yeah. That is, I'm a little bit stunned because it's that concept, isn't it, of that baseline. You've got food, you've got water, you've got those things that make you survive and make you function, but you've got that density surrounding you to keep you safe. Nobody can get in there. David, you are a profound writer. I always love your writing. I just wondered how you felt in response to that.
It is so descriptive of the feeling in itself, of itself, and I love the metaphor. It exactly describes what that sensation is, and when I say sensation, it's probably the wrong word. I mean, it's almost a way of being. It lasts for so long.
It's existing.
It's not a behavior. As you say, it's an existence.
Yeah, it becomes who you are, and you don't know how to be anything else. And it was hard to break out of that and to break that cycle, because I was all of a sudden coming into the world where people could hurt me again. And the difference was this time was I was equipped and I knew what to do. And a great thing that I learned as well through this process was, and something that I didn't quite consider, was the lack of value that I'd had in myself for many, many years through the trauma that I faced. And with all sorts of trauma, there's a lot of shame that's put upon yourself by other people and internally as well. So my value of myself was so low, and I didn't trust my own ability, because I'd been out in the world already and I'd made all these choices, and look where it had led me. So I didn't trust and I didn't value myself, and I certainly didn't love myself. So the process then of coming into myself and going, okay, how am I going to value myself? How am I going to build up this thing? Because also there's a lot of guilt attached to valuing oneself. You're almost accused sometimes of being arrogant or confident, or I mean, this isn't necessarily gender specific, but I know as a woman, you know, if we're assertive and we're confident, it's almost seen societally as a negative, as a bullshit, you know, whereas so it's a very difficult concept for me, well, it was, to value oneself and to go, I'm all right, you know, I'm all right. If you don't think I'm all right, and I've got the tools here. I've got the tools to, I don't need all this armor. I've got the tools internally to sift through and to allow those people into my life and start to feel like I belonged somewhere, because I've never belonged anywhere in my life until very recently. And I mean, I'm 37 and I've just started to feel like I can connect and I can belong places and I can be with people authentically and show my authentic self. And that's come from the value that I've placed within myself and that I've learned to do. And it was hard, really, really hard to learn to do that.
So you're you know, forgive me if I'm on the wrong track, but what I'm hearing is that in actual fact, your protection changed its course by the value that you gave yourself, which was, you know, motivated by the value that you, as this mum looking at these little beans that we have to look after, you looked at them and thought, hang on a minute, that's not the blueprint I want from them. So it's interesting, isn't it, that we think protection should be like this. You know, we can all do it. We can all nip down the bottom of the garden, eat worms, pull away type thing. But yours had become this way of life. And I'm thinking that maybe those tools then are about, actually, my value makes my protection, because do you get more choice?
Well, you get more choice, but you also, your defense changes. It changes from this to open arms. It changes to, okay, here I am. This is me. This is me. And that acceptance that you've got within yourself. I mean, I'm not perfect. I've got flaws. I've done things wrong. There's things I'm not proud of and everything. But if I can wholeheartedly sit in front of the mirror and go, I accept you as myself. I accept myself. Then what can hurt me then? What can hurt me? I mean, I'm sure that there is pain, there's various different things that you go through in your life, but ultimately what I'm sort of avoiding is trauma. What can traumatize me now, that I can go, I'm okay, your words can't hurt me, your actions can't hurt me, because I value who I am. And with that as well comes a value in others, and it becomes you can look at people now as a whole, and you can kind of appreciate the value within them, and you can kind of see their insecurities and why they're potentially behaving the way that they behave, even though it doesn't excuse any behavior, any bad behavior or ill treatment. I then have the power to go, okay, well, I don't want to deal with that. I'm sorry that maybe you've got some trauma, but that's not going to affect me. And it all did come down to value. And I've written something about that as well. There's two more.
If you'd like to, we'd love to hear it.
You'd like to hear it?
Yeah, definitely.
There was just two more things that I was sort of. One of the ones was sort of the process of going through all of this was trying to understand why things had happened to me that had happened. And that was a difficult question, because it's not got an answer. You know, I'll never find the answer of why some things happened. But as I sort of began to understand myself and understand that I'm not going to understand why that happened, but I understand me and I can change it. It doesn't have to happen again. And then the why did this happen to me, lost its gravity, and that wasn't the important thing. It became forward thinking. It became how am I going to prevent that in the future? How am I going to healthily, not by dissociation, not by introversy, not by anything along those means, but just by sheer knowledge and value. And on that note, there's two more things that I wanted to read. So the first one was this one. And I wrote this kind of in a bit of a sad place when I was reflecting on how alone I'd felt. And being in therapy was the sort of first time that I was authentically me, and I could really felt safe to open up those parts of me that I kept to myself for many, many years. I wish someone had told me that sacrificing my own boundaries in the name of empathy wasn't noble. It made me a container for other people's trauma. I wish someone had told me that the road to redemption wasn't, in fact, the act of sacrifice, and it wasn't even a road I needed to be walking down. I wish someone had told me to stop fighting for love when love was never going to come from the places I was so desperate to reach. I would drain myself while filling them with the love I would provide. I wish someone had told me that beneath my eyes was a deep soul, which some would try to ruin with words and unkindness to meet their own ends. My soul is not for sale, yet has been bought time and time again by the promise of love and security, which never materialized. I wish someone had told me that I wasn't accountable for their treatment of me, that my boundaries were not wrong or crazy, that my empathy should allow me to see the trauma in others, yet not have to accept their ill treatment because of their own demons. I wish someone had told me that saying no was my right. I didn't have to feel guilty for not agreeing, and I didn't have to make excuses to justify that no means no. I wish someone had told me that I didn't have to feel ashamed of myself, that it's okay to make mistakes, and I would still be loved should I fail. I wish someone had told me earlier that the knowledge of all this was, in fact, within myself, and the only person to teach me would be me. The end.
I think I'm going to say that from a woman's point of view. You know, I'm going to look at that through a patriarchal lens of, God, what a powerful statement. I appreciate that is from your point of view. I just think, you know,
well, it's transferable, isn't it? And definitely when I wrote it, because I mean, most of my trauma has been put on me by men. So I looked at things from the position of a woman, and I think a lot of my writing can be sort of transferable to many situations, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. David, you were going to say something.
Yeah, that is just so powerful. And the great thing that comes across in what you write, Sarah, is that it's so you. You don't need to express yourself in any other way. You know, you don't have to change anything or adjust anything. What you hear and what you see is you.
And I think
that's what makes it so powerful.
I think that it's helped me to learn who I am, writing these things down and go.
That's what I'm trying to say, rather ineloquently, that it's in the writing. You come across.
Oh, that's maybe I should just write books to people.
Get rid of conversation, just write the book.
All right, just read this, it's fine. Everything you need to know is in here.
You know, right from the start, you know, what you've been saying, the essence of it, and I'm sure, you know, you'll give me another spin on that if this is miles away. The message is, you know, we have a place in the universe, and we give it up too easily. We all have a space. We all have a presence, and when that's eroded and lost, that's when the pain begins. When you lose your place.
It is, and I mean, I felt for a long time that I didn't belong here. I didn't know where I belonged, but I didn't think I belonged anywhere. And that's due to a lot of trauma. That's due to a lot of toxic relationships. That's due to being completely stripped of my sense of self. So you're right, David. And the message that is so important is that everybody does belong. We all belong. We all belong to each other. We all belong on this earth. It's everybody's. Nobody owns it. You know, we've all got a place here, and it's hard. Life is really, really hard, and some have it harder than others, but it's really, really hard. And if you're living with trauma and you're living with all of that inside yourself, and then you're so disconnected because that's what you've done to survive. Like we said before, it's an existence. It's not a life. You're just a breathing robot. And yeah, Aneesh, what you said before about my children, I want to be more for them than a breathing robot. And also, equally as important, I want to be more for myself. And as soon as I started to open up that, things rushed in to me. And good things rushed in, and I found joy in putting the Christmas tree up, and I found joy in in little things. And I was like, almost like my inner child was safe now. She could come out, she could show the world and go, hello, I'm here, like me, hi, I'm all right, I'm safe, everything's fine. And it was liberating, massively liberating. And it's such a revelation for me. And it was life-changing, massively life-changing. I mean, I'm still on a process, I'm still on a journey. There's still a lot that I'm trying to figure out. But ultimately, from where I was sort of a year, 18 months ago, the vast difference, but I've put in the work. I've really worked really hard. And it's not, no, I've rehabilitated myself. That's basically what I've done, and it's not easy.
And I think that's really important, isn't it, to say that, you know, when, you know, if you are a person that goes the path of therapy, you know, some people do things in different ways, but it is, isn't it? It's that kind of putting the work in, that you don't sit in the chair and all of a sudden, you know, become healed in some way. You know, that in actual fact you learn how to manage adverse experiences that have caused a deep impact of a long-lasting trauma response. I'm intrigued as to what your next piece of writing is, and I'm also a little bit like, I want to hear it. You know, I feel like I'm a little bit on the edge of my seat.
Well, the last piece is kind of one of my more recent pieces, and it was, so my writings tended to be kind of in three parts. It's kind of started at the trauma that I've faced as the stories, the narrative, that's kind of the things that have happened. And then it's gone on to why. So I've looked sort of into my childhood and the patterns and what I was doing. And then the third part is more the transformation almost. I know it's quite a twee word, but I think it's relevant, certainly to my process, because it has been quite a transformation. And this kind of goes back to the topic of what we were talking about valuing oneself and not feeling guilty for doing that. She is valuable, a soul that is deep and intelligent, who has seen the world through so much pain, yet is still able to see light and joy and give love in measures that could warm through the coldest of nights. She laughs at the world through tragedy to joy, and her energy transcends into some she meets, and she makes them smile and laugh too. She cannot be caught or tamed, she is free. And if she chooses you, and you encourage her to fly, she will return time and time again, never needing a rope or a cage to keep her. She is fierce like a storm on raging seas, yet instantly calming and at peace. She knows what to do. She has seen so much that now, if you listen, she can show you all the things she has learned, all the places she has been, all the people she has met. She is a book with tattered corners and ripped edges, but she will let you read her pages if you are trusted enough with the stories that are written within her. She sees clearly and wouldn't suffer a fool. She can feel the presence of God and warms herself in the light of it. She listens and she learns. She would sit for hours hearing stories of your past, your future desires and your joys. She will remember things about you, and when you are sad, she will remind you of your happiness. She will not fight with you if she knows she will not be heard, nor will she stay if she is treated badly or if she is hurt. She will slip away quietly over time, and you will be left with a void which was once filled with a heart that you could not carry and a love that you did not deserve. The end.
David, over to you, because I'm still caught in the book with the tattered corners.
Yeah, I noticed that you probably were, and so am I. That is just wow. It speaks volumes. And yeah, I am quite stuck for words.
That's a first.
Yeah, it might well be a first. Congratulations.
I shall receive that honour.
Somebody has quieted Aneesh and David.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do now.
Take it on a roll. And just just to say clearly, you know, we need to close this session. We always say the same, that, you know, we want to talk more. We could talk for hours, and I think we did actually the other week. Sarah, you have a beauty and a simplicity in your writing, and I enjoy the reflection of nature and that connection of us being earthbound beings, however, you know, that we are part of something that belongs to all of us on this earth. And I think that's probably really pertinent at this moment in time as we look out to a very ravaged earth.
Yes.
And I think that's why for me, that's why your work is so multifaceted on how it can reach to so many different people for so many reasons, because you're not sharing a specific event, you're sharing you in response to your experience. And I found that really, really deeply moving. And that is a genuine, it's not, I found it really moving, it was fabulous. I genuinely, that tattered book corners is going to stick with me. God, I relate to that.
Yeah, I think many people could.
Yeah, I think the joy of it is in the fact that there's a lot spoken of post-traumatic growth, but
Yes.
that just describes post-traumatic growth. And in my work, if I am to say, good will come of what you've experienced. There is a lesson to be learned, no matter how bad it gets. And at that point, I'll say something like, you will think I am crazy for saying this right now, but what you just read to us describes post-trauma, the growth that can come of it, the altruism that comes from it, and the zest for life, and wanting to do well and wanting to do better and wanting better for everyone around you. But you described it much better than I ever could in that work, and I very much appreciate it.
It's got to be for something. The pain.
Yeah,
it has to be. It has to be for something.
Yeah.
Thank you for your kind, both of you.
No, honestly,
You're more
you know
than
what? When that book is published, I will be my friends will be like, oh, Aneesha's found a book she likes, and here she goes. Sorry, David, I won't send one to you because I think you're gonna get your own. But David, talk us out.
Again, what I say is never going to be enough, and I mean, I'm so full of gratitude for you sharing that with us, and everyone that picks up on this, I'm sure, will feel the same way, especially if their experiences are anywhere near similar. And I just want to thank you, and I wish you well.
Thank you both. Thank you for inviting me.
No, thank you. Thank you for sharing you.
No. Thank you.
Okay. Take care, everybody.